Hello, and welcome to another episode of Cooking with Corona. Although, as you'll know, if you've been watching this series up until this point, we're not actually cooking with Corona, we are in fact cooking while we're in lockdown. That is, of course, unless you're suffering from COVID-19, in which case you are in fact cooking with Corona in both respects of connotations that appear within that sentence. The first festive dish we're going to make, it's not so much a dish as an ingredient, which is probably why I don't mind it so much, but though I don't care for festive frivolities until December, it's November, and this requires about a month to be effective. This is something called Christmas mincemeat, and there's a history behind why it's called mince. There is a recipe for Christmas pies that is savoury that I'll make closer to the time, but one of the last you'll see as we go along exactly why it's called mince. It's a sweet dish, this. And what I've done is I've got these sultanas, currants, and raisins soaking in water. The raisins in particular have soaked out really and become really large. You'll like that. That's good. Just get them out of the water, hollow them out a little, and put them in a mixing bowl like this. I've drained off each of these dried fruits, which are now not so dry. You can see how enormous these sultanas look. Now that they've soaked, there's no strict... I'm actually not following any strict regulation in terms of what I have to follow, because there is no... Everyone has their own recipe. Because this is a dish that derived from the days when many different fruits, especially dried fruits and citrus fruits, were very expensive. So these are the first ones, the more or less compulsory ones that are almost always in Christmas mincemeat that is sweet. Another thing that you will find in most is citrus fruit. You can vary that. You can also, if you wish, you'll add dried cranberries that have been soaked in a similar way, because we associate cranberry juice very much with Christmas because of how we have it with turkey. But these are the three main ingredients we're going to start with that I'm going to have today. Everyone, as I said, has their own recipe and their own reason for combining it, but the next thing to add then are the citrus fruits, or a bit of them. Alright, well, I've just cut this lemon, and I'm going to squeeze the juice of half of this fruit into there. Get rid of those seeds as well. This is going to go in amongst all these not so dry fruits. Half the lemon. In fact, because it's shriveled a bit, I'll probably put the whole lemon in. I'm going to need the peel, so I'm not going to throw it just yet. Now, oranges. Now, of course, oranges have a very interesting history in this country. They were expensive back in the day, and so they were a sign of affection. If you went to the theatre, for example, you'd have what were known as the orange wenches, in the same way that you have choc ices today, people standing around with ice creams and so on that you get in the interval. The orange wenches would have dried fruits and citrus fruits, the most expensive of which were called China oranges or Chinese oranges, what you today would call mandarin oranges, which are still some of the most expensive citrus fruits you can buy. And you'd buy one and give it to your lover. So an orange, or a citrus fruit, or a dried fruit was a sign of affection. And that's why we associate them with Christmas. Now this is more of a satsuma, so again, rather than use half of the fruit, I'm going to use the juice of all of the fruit in here. So far as it is possible, again, I'm going to try and avoid putting the seeds in. I'm sure if I had my orange squeezer around, that would make it easier to do it, but I don't seem to be able to find it right now. So, oh, a little bit of pulp, that's good as well. Isn't that lovely looking? Now I'm going to add some carrot to it as well. That's a rare addition, but I think it'll work. It's a kind of a wartime thing. We have carrot cake to this day, which I may make one day on this channel, because sugar was rationed and so we use other sweet things instead. So I'm going to grate some carrot over this as well. Now usually the thing to soak them in, apart from the lemon and orange juice, would in fact be brandy. Now I do have some brandy for the purpose of other festive recipes I want to make. But right here, to give it its own unique kick, I've got sherry brandy, which was the favourite concoction of my maternal grandmother, who I sadly never met. Reportedly at my parents' wedding, she was riddled with cancer. She looked older than my great-grandmother at the time, or the same age. And just once, the nurse that was with her, she was at the table looking very terrible and said, just once, have one glass of sherry brandy. She had one little glass and everything lit up. Little spot of red on the nose and she became alive again. So just to commemorate her, though I never knew her, I think I'm going to add some sherry brandy to this as well. So I'm going to leave it to soak 100, well, maybe more than 100 millilitres actually. We'll see how it goes. Might even make it more than 100. Yes, I will. Just a little over 200, in fact. In we go then. And I'll leave that to soak for about an hour. Next up, with lemon. Here's the carrot then. Grate the carrot in. It's a lovely odd shape, isn't it? Apple next. Nice sweet apple. You put in pretty much all of the apple except the stalk and the core. Was going to add some fresh ginger, but don't seem to be able to find any. Not too much. If I can find some powdered ginger, I might put that in. Give it a stir before we do anything. Like so. I've got a little cinnamon here, a very Christmassy thing to add to a Christmas dish. Not too much, because you don't want it to overpower the general flavour. Here's some powdered ginger. I'll put that in then. Again, not too much. About a teaspoon. One of the recipes I'm following calls for 250 grams worth of soft brown sugar. Another one says for 350 grams. I've got a little less than 100, frankly, but I'm hoping all the other sweet things inside the dish will be all right for it. Here's the here's that amount then. I'll mix that in. I had any nutmeg, but I do, so freakishly, for the first I'm going to use it, about half a teaspoon rather. Don't get that mixed up. By the way, as I think I've referenced before, everyone has their own personal mincemeat. Because it's derived from a time people just flung together whatever they needed, it's fine. Therefore, what follows is not compulsory. However, in keeping with tradition, I'm going to add suet. Thus far, everything's been veggie friendly. Just use what I've used if that's all you want to have. But as a last vestige of when it was a savoury dish, I am going to be adding a little suet. And I've got a kidney right here with the suet skin still on it for the purpose. Just bring it out here. There's a little bit of skin on it. It's like bringing it out of cling film. And just cut that away. I'll make a separate dish with this kidney. You'll see what it is later. Another kidney to get more suet. Of course, if you're using ordinary ox's kidney, you only need to use the one. You may have, it is possible to buy suet, shredded suet, in a box, but the stuff is covered in flour, and so if you have gluten-free people in your family, as I do, then you can't have that. So this is how you do it. Now, I've got just over 200 grams of this suet then, this shredded suet. Shredded suet is in, and all you have to do is stir it in. Isn't that lovely? Again, if you're a vegetarian, you can use vegetarian suet, but be warned because that usually has flour in it as well. So if you're on a gluten-free diet, be warned. Oh, I can really smell that lovely sherry brandy. Now, having mixed it well, I'm going to put the oven on at 110 degrees Celsius approximately. It's preheated now. I'm going to cover the bowl over with tin foil, and on that relatively low heat, with the bowl covered over, I am going to warm up these ingredients. What I'm hoping is that the currants and the fruits will all warm up and that the fat will melt, but we'll see. And I'll keep that in the oven for 3 hours, so I'll see you in another 3 hours' time. It's a bit later. Now, the thing has been in the oven for 3 hours now on a low heat. Let us see what it is like now. What a wonderfully festive smell that is. Oh, it's lovely. Let's get that trusty wooden spoon again. Give it a stir. Look at that. Just as I hoped, it's melted. The suet has more or less melted. Let's have a taste. You wouldn't even know that was suet if I hadn't said. Alright, so we'll give it a stir. We'll let it cool for a bit. And at some point I'll add a little extra sherry brandy, but not too much more. It's a point of contention, you see, as to whether you're supposed to put the brandy or the alternative of brandy before or after you heat it, or even whether you heat it at all. I am heating it, but I'll put in a little bit extra, but not much. You see, doesn't that look festive? Doesn't it look beautiful? The bowl isn't too hot to handle either, which is what I feared. So, we can do away with this. Very well, I sterilised this jar once again. Now I'm going to put this, now that it's cooled off for a bit, into the jar. Well, I did not, as I half suspected, have enough space within this one jar to contain all of what was in that bowl. But I've got myself a beer glass, and another tall glass here, and I've sealed them over. So that will be my Christmas meat, mincemeat, referred to as meat because of the suet within. I will, as I said, make the mince pies both sweet and savoury. This, though, is how you make the sweet variety. And the good thing about it is that keep it sealed in this way in a cool place and it'll store for a whole year. You can come back to it and make next year's mince pies. Just briefly come in. I've found this tall spaghetti stand here. I've rinsed it out and I've sterilised it. With a bit of luck, we'll be able to put the mincemeat into just one container. So, ta-ta! And welcome to another episode of Cooking with Corona. Although, as you'll know, if you've been watching up to this point, we're not actually cooking with Corona. We are, in fact, cooking during the pandemic that is upon us. That is COVID. We are, in fact, cooking... Blech. How many times have I said this up till this point? Hello, and welcome to another episode of Cooking with Corona. Although, as you'll know, if you've been watching up to this point, we are not, in fact, cooking with Corona. We are, in fact, cooking... We are cooking... I can't believe this. Hello. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Cooking with Corona. although, as you'll know, if you've been watching this series up until this point, we're not actually cooking with Corona. We are, in fact, cooking while we're in lockdown. That is, of course, unless you're suffering from COVID-19, in which case you are, in fact, cooking with Corona in both respects to connotations that appear within that sentence. Got it out in the end. Tastes like date juice. Now, got just over 200 grams of this suet then, this shredded suet. And we're back. Having mixed it well, I'm going to cover it over with tin foil. Actually, no, I'm not. Now, I'm going to put the oven on. And on this relatively low heat, but not with that foil, with the bowl covered over, I am going to warm up these ingredients.